Hey, all right,
Absolutely.
Liz, I am so excited to have you on the show because we met through mutual friends. We found ourselves in the streets of Old San Juan, Puerto Rico. Like, what are the fucking chances? I always believe, like, if you want to have like a spiritual awakening, you have to go to Puerto Rico. I'm obviously biased, but I feel like I've made incredible epiphanies there and just incredible connections. And you were one of these people. When we started talking, we're like sitting on the steps on some random cobblestone street and realizing that we had so much in common. Like, we've been through very similar stories. And I can't wait for folks to find out more about you. But before we get into all the tea, give us your elevator pitch. Who are you and what do you do?
Hi, thank you so much for having me here, Denise. And I wish we could transfer back to that day. It was so fun.
It
It
was.
was the best time. If people haven't gone to Festival, they got to experience it.
Yes.
My name is Liz Fernandez. I'm so grateful to be here and really share my wisdom with your community. I am an eldest daughter of immigrants. I am a therapist turned business coach for therapists and coaches. And I serve Latinas in really breaking life and income ceilings through a coaching business and creating a path for themselves. As an eldest daughter myself and someone with no previous business background, I had all odds against me. And I'm here living proof that we can change the narrative of our story with any decision that we decide to take when we take it.
So there's many interesting things about your story. One of them is that you actually live in Mexico City, but you weren't born in Mexico City, were you?
I wasn't. I was actually born and raised in California in a small little Central Coast city that's predominantly agricultural based. And I have always had a love for the motherland. Both of my parents are from Michoacan, Mexico. And since I was little, I was a farm working student. So meaning that my parents worked the farm working field. And really my whole lineage has been a part of like the Cesar Chavez movement and the farm working movement. And I migrated with the seasons a lot. And so I would come to Mexico every 6 months when I was little, since I can remember. And so I really got really rooted into my culture. And I always had this dream of living here in Mexico and reclaiming the homeland. And I did it. I never in a million years would have imagined I'd be here, but I'm close to celebrating 3 years now. So it's been a
Wow.
beautiful, powerful reclamation of my culture.
I love that. And we're going to talk about how you actually facilitated that move because if there's one thing I know about the therapy industry, I have a lot of friends who are in it and y'all are hella overworked and underpaid. Okay. This is one of these fields that the education is not optional. Typically, you need to have at least a master's degree to practice to be a therapist, a licensed therapist. And I've read recently the average salary is like under $50,000 approximately, which is just like, I'm sorry, the degree costs more than that. What the hell are we talking about here? So I understand why people get into the field. And I think it definitely appeals to women of color, because we are typically very giving, very communal, very nurturing, and we want to help the world. And therapy just seems like one of those avenues to be able to do that. So I think that the intentions are often noble, but unfortunately, the reality is that a lot of women of color who find themselves in this field are burnt out, are exhausted, are overworked, are not seeing the benefits of what they're trying to do, which is to help either individuals or a community. And so I want to know for you, what was your initial draw to becoming a therapist?
My lived experience coming back from really a childhood of witnessing domestic violence in my household, having a father that consumed a lot of alcohol, like both of my mom was undocumented at the time. And so really seeing all of the things that I grew up with really helped me, and being also a product of it too, right? Because I was in therapy since I was 5 years old because of all the craziness that happened in my household. And so really my lived experiences as a child really made me want to pursue and the field to help and be like give back to our community. I had social workers in and out of my house all of the time. And so I also experienced the negative side of what it's like to experience the system. And so I really wanted to be someone that created that change, of course, because of that lived experience. So that's really what brought me to the field.
That makes sense. Okay, so you study this, you get into the therapy practice. What are you kind of discovering that maybe you didn't know when you were first thinking about this career path?
Well, funny enough, I was in graduate school when I realized I didn't want to be a therapist for the rest of my life because the
It's an
pandemic
expensive
happened.
lesson to learn.
Very expensive that I'm still paying. Yeah, I was in graduate school. It was a 3-year program. And in the pandemic, I really was feeling burnt out. I was into my second year. My program was 3 years long. I was working full time. I was getting ready to start my practicum hours, and the pandemic happened. And
Mm,
so I experienced being a therapist during a time of global crisis.
yeah.
And although it was mainly remote, it was the most horrific experience I've ever had that made
Talk
me
about trial
realize.
by fire. That's crazy.
Absolutely. I realize this is not a life that I want to live, and I don't want to retire doing this work. I care about my people, but there has to be a different way to help my people. I realized I didn't really care for serving certain types of like populations when it came to a clinical setting and diagnosing people. I didn't identify with the values of it. And just a system, I realized I also went to a private school and I was one of the only Latinas in the room. And
Mm,
so that also really opened up my world as to how we were being trained to be employees and to be part of a system rather than be entrepreneurs. And so I realized, okay, they sell us this dream of being a private practice owner, and that's like the top of you've made it. And I don't want to do this forever. And I don't want to wait 7 years of my life I can't afford to do that as an eldest daughter and first gen Latina. I need to get my feet in the door now. And so I discovered coaching, and my life took a totally different direction.
yeah. Oh, I love it. Okay, so how does one come upon the world of coaching? What was that process like for you? And what were you seeking when you first found out about coaching?
I was seeking a way to be creative and help my people on my terms because I already had the knowledge. I had been doing the work for years. And I was here getting a degree, and of course, like being in a more clinical setting with clients and understanding the field. But I really wanted to serve my people on my own terms. I knew my community needed help now, and therapy wasn't going to be the only avenue. And so I came across coaching during the pandemic. And my idea initially was to grow my personal brand because maybe by the time I graduated, I would have a following and it would open up doors for me. And the coaches that I worked with at the time were teaching us how to launch our first ever offer. And so I did it scared, not really knowing what I was doing, right, with a lot of imposter syndrome. And within 3 months, I had my first $25,000 launch. And then after 3 months, I had another $25,000 launch. And so 6 months into my business, I had $50,000 sitting in the bank, and I had no idea what I was going to do with it. I had never seen that much money in my life. And I'm getting
Yeah. I mean,
chills as
that's
I
like an
say this.
annual salary for a therapist in like a couple of months. That's wild.
Absolutely, especially as a therapist in training, because I
Mhm.
didn't even have my degree at the time.
Yeah.
And it quickly opened my eyes and my worldview as to what was possible with the knowledge I already had. And I was serving Latinas too. At the time, the program was called Latinas Aligned, and it was about helping you live your life authentically, post grad life. And so I saw there was a huge need there. And it was something that an experience that completely changed my worldview and my perspective of what was possible.
Mm.
And that was set for me.
Wow. Okay. So much to dive into there. I speak to a lot of women who are therapists and who are trying to figure out like how to start making more money. I think the first question that I hear typically is like, what is the difference between therapy and coaching? Like, where does that line differentiate?
Yeah, so a therapy, I like to describe it. Therapy and coaching are like siblings to each other, is the way I like to describe it. They both support people in increasing their quality of life, just in different ways. And so therapy supports you in processing the past, really understanding how your past is impacting where you are now and identifying patterns, a lot of processing, a lot of diagnosing, a little bit more clinical. And then when you think about coaching, it's more where you are now and where you want to go. It's more solution focused, it's more solution oriented. And so there are a lot of modalities in the therapy practice that help you that are very transferable to coaching. And so that's where a lot of therapists can feel a sense of confusion and really feeling like, am I blurring the lines? Am I going to get in trouble? Is my license going to be revoked? And so, given our cultural narrative as well as Latina therapists, it's hard for us to, like, we are so afraid of getting in trouble. And so, I see that come up a lot with a lot of therapists that explore even tapping into what's beyond private practice or what's beyond this field of therapy while leveraging their skills.
Mm. So let's dive into that more. Can you give us an example of how a therapist could offer both therapy and coaching?
Absolutely. So, if you are a therapist in private practice and you are mainly doing talk therapy, a lot of therapists also are generalists because we're trained to do everything and help anyone. And so, this is where a lot of therapists also get stuck when it comes to marketing themselves and really growing their therapy practice because they're speaking to everyone. And if we know anything about marketing your work, it's like being specific really helps, not only for you to like work with clients you really want to serve, but also for like the growth of your business. And so if you're a therapist that's in private practice, what I would offer is really identifying based on your trajectory, who are the clients that really lit you up? Like what were those topics and conversations and things that came up in sessions that you treated, that you supported? That's going to help you really solidify who it is that you want to support and get really intentional about your private practice. Because a lot of therapists are just taking anyone because they don't feel they can, afford to just be specific with who they support. And as it comes to coaching, right, there's a common thread there. It would just look like supporting that population that they really want to serve from a more solution focused approach. And so I have clients that I serve where they're relationship therapists and then they become breakup coaches. That's very specific. It's really something that supports them in helping someone heal through a solution focused approach versus a more processing longer term treatment support.
That makes sense. So the relationship therapy would be like, what are the patterns that you have that are getting you in these cycles where you're continuously dating like narcissists or something, right? And then the breakup coach is like helping you. Okay, so here you are, you're single again. We're going to not repeat patterns of the past. How are we going to get you to like that relationship of your dreams, right? So it's like you're helping them figure out what not to do again, but also giving them a plan to live their best life in the future.
Absolutely. You painted
Okay.
it beautifully.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay. So, one of the things that I know about therapists is that they are licensed based on the state in which they operate. What is the restrictions or lack thereof around the coaching industry when it comes to therapists?
Great question. It really depends by state. There's a lot of therapists, there's a lot of thoughts about coaches right now. There's this common misconception that coaching is just therapy but charging more money, right? But it has like that's totally not it. They're totally different fields. And again, that's why I like using the reference that they're siblings to each other. So when it comes to the different states, it's really going to depend. For example, if you're licensed in California, you can't practice in the rest of the United States. If you're practicing, I don't know, if you practice in New York and you're licensed there, you can't practice in California, right? So it really, there's a lot of different limitations when it comes to where and who you can serve. And so when it comes to coaching, because coaching is still not a regulated industry, the Board of Behavioral Sciences or just the therapy field in general, the different boards, they still haven't necessarily caught a grip because they're two different industries. They're trying to see how they can regulate it as much as possible. I've seen some clients that I serve really all over the United States that have a lot of thoughts around marketing their work in a same website. And so what I offer to clients that want to explore coaching, but they're limited by their license and they want to protect their license is that although the rules haven't been established and they haven't been made and like been written on paper, I always offer my clients to really have a client agreement in place that says, I'm a licensed therapist. This is not therapy. Here's a disclosure, right? All the different disclosures they can have in their client agreements for coaching is always going to help them protect themselves if the board ever goes and like puts in something into the rules of therapy. And so right now there's not really clear guidelines established for the boards because there's a wide variety of credentials. There's
Yeah.
family marriage therapists, social workers, like the credentials are endless.
That makes a lot of sense. So basically, it's good idea to figure out what the kind of restrictions are from a state perspective when it comes to your licensing. But as far as coaching is concerned, it is a completely unregulated industry, which is great for the fact that like there aren't those restrictions, but it also means unscrupulous people can get into these industries. And one of the things that I see everybody claiming is that they are trauma informed coaches. What the hell does this mean? And is this like a real thing?
Yes, it is a real thing.
Okay.
And there's different lenses to it. You can be trauma informed if you have a certification, if you have a specific training. However, there are people that say they're trauma informed because they come from a trauma experience and lens, and they have maybe prior education that they've taken, but they're not actually certified. They just
Mhm.
bring that world lens. It's like if I say I'm a Latina coach, I bring the Latina perspective to the lens I coach people, but that's just who I am, right? That's my identity. And so trauma informed is something that's become very popular in our communities because people want to also take on that title. And that's not to discredit their own credit, their certifications, right? But a lot of people want to be seen and like perceived as someone that is trauma informed. And so they include that in their titles.
Okay. Is there a way for you to differentiate yourself by the fact that you're a therapist when you are trying to set out on this coaching industry? Like, what would you say are the best ways to kind of make yourself stand out? Because, the argument could be made that, like, well, everybody's a coach nowadays. So, like, who cares about what I'm doing right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would offer that really solidifying your identities in each, right? I always say that adding the work coach to the work that you do, or like the title coach, is only going to amplify the impact that you can create. And so I know that a lot of therapists have thoughts about calling themselves coaches because they somehow think that it's less credible and all of their background, like they're starting over. And so what I would offer is getting really clear with who it is that you love supporting within your therapy field, so that you can then have a clearer direction over what you want to even identify as a coach. Because I tell my clients all the time, you don't have to call yourself a coach. You can say you're a guide, you can say you're a healer, you can say you're a somatic expert. Like, you don't have to identify with the title coach. And so really getting really a grip over who it is that you want to support within your therapy practice. And a lot of clinicians, they're already so experienced, but where they have an issue is in getting specific about who they want to help, because they can help everyone.
Okay. I love that. All right, let's talk about sales, because I think one of the things that people get like weird about is some of the potential like weirdly unethical methods that the coaching industry is known for, like selling their products, like the bro marketing and just like kind of exploiting people's pain points and just making them feel like shit in order for them to buy from you. I'm not a fan of that. I am a fan of like making your audience feel seen, making your ideal client feel like, oh shit, she gets me with the content, like speaking to your people's struggles. So how do we balance that, the ethics around sales, so that you can still feel good about the money that you're earning while you're helping people?
I love this question. I actually developed a whole ethics framework for sales
Of course
because
you
my
did,
clients had
because
a
you're a
lot of
good
thoughts.
coach.
Because the fear that therapists have, and just people in general that start coaching, especially if you're coming from like an under like served community and low income community, we have a lot of thoughts about money, and that really impacts the way that we go and talk about our work. And something silly that I always share with clients is like, okay, si las Kardashians venden calzones, like why are you embarrassed to sell your services that are making, people better people in like this world, in the collective, a better place? And so what I offer there is really, when we do the math, Janice, when we like actually calculate what they're charging, usually my clients start charging anywhere between $2,000, $2,500 for like a 4-month package, for example. We cut that and like we do the math for each session. It's averaging around the same price that they would charge for a private practice. It's like $200, $250, except that our community really learns that you have to charge like less than $100 for your services, right? We're so conditioned to undercharge because we're so used to these narratives of also serving underserved communities through the work, right? And so what I offer is the thoughts about money are really going to impact you in terms of like your business growth as well. And working through your money story is so important in this process, but also looking at like actually doing the numbers and looking at like what it actually looks like per session. That gives them so much permission. And something else that I always offer is, selling is serving. And when I coach my clients, I really use this approach of storytelling. storytelling, your lived experience, because it's always interrelated with the work that you end up doing. And so when you're selling or offering your work from your heart, from your experience, from what you've been through, from the lessons you've learned, that automatically is a heartfelt, like serving way of inviting people to work with you. And I always really phrase it as an invitation. You're never convincing or pulling anyone in. You're making them feel seen, but you're also really holding space for everything that they are and inviting them into your world and letting them know that they can help you. And so when you're coming from this serving energy, like it really lowers the noise and the thoughts that come up of feeling guilty for charging for your service. Because if it was for them, they would be giving away their services for free because that's how deeply connected they are to the work.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is this expectation or this inherent belief that like our communities can't afford our services, which I think that's a terrible narrative to like even try to operate under because you're basically like diminishing your clients like before you even work with them. So that's number one. Number two, you cannot pour from an empty cup. So if you are literally like giving your services away, you are running on fumes. You are not showing up as the best version of yourself as a coach, as a therapist, and your people are not going to get like top notch level of service that you're capable of because you're literally just trying to like scrape together coins to buy some bread. So I think it's so important for us to understand like we need to give ourselves abundance so that we can give freely and like be at the most elevated version of ourselves because our clients deserve nothing less.
Absolutely. It's like the best quality of care you can give them is to actually charge prices that are going to help you pay the bills, but also it's an energetic exchange. It's like all the years of education that you have under your belt to
Facts.
support them through this transformation.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Okay, so what do you think are some of the like limitations that exist in the traditional therapy space that coaching can fill?
There's so many, Janice. I could write a book on this.
You
There's
should.
so many. We're talking location freedom. We're talking just therapy is very westernized, right?
Mm,
And so when it comes to location freedom, modalities, the people that you can support, like you can serve the world with coaching, with therapy. One, you can't give people advice, right? So you really literally can't support them through a solution focused approach. And so it limits, the transformations clients can create. There's a lot of clients that will graduate from therapy. But then what's next? Like, how do they continue creating transformation? Like they've done the work in therapy. And of course, healing isn't linear. If you're always going to be growing, things are always going to be coming up. And so one thing is really the location, the time, the modalities, where you're allowed to work from, how much you're allowed to earn, right? With therapy, there's almost like this ceiling that you reach when it comes to how much you can earn. With coaching, there isn't, right? You establish your own boundaries, your own policies. Also, when it comes to flexibility, I do believe that people have this understanding that, oh, once you are working in private practice, you technically have flexibility. If you wanted to take the time off, you could, but you don't get paid when you take the time off because you get paid by session. And so if people don't come to the session, you don't get paid. So your income is always going to rely on whether you can physically do the work or if your clients can actually show up to the calls. And so a lot of therapists don't get paid during the winter if their clients are off, or in the summer if they're taking vacation times. And with coaching, you can structure your business model in a way where you get paid in a package so that you get paid up front and so on and so forth. And so there's a lot of different variations that really help you reach this next level of flexibility and freedom and autonomy when you actually practice coaching and you're not practicing under your license, which is, again, another misconception, right? You're practicing in a totally separate industry.
Okay. So can you operate the coaching business and the therapy business like under the same quote unquote umbrella, or is it something that you kind of want to have like two different businesses?
I would offer two different businesses just to keep things clean and to always have a trial on paper because the board, you just don't know what rules they're going to come up with. And so I offer that. Well, for some states, I know in California, you basically don't have an LLC for your private practice. You're a sole proprietor. And so for coaching, I always offer that people that are thinking about adding coaching to their work, they just create a separate like sole proprietorship, separate bank account, separate just client agreements, just to have that separation between the two.
I love that. Okay. So I can imagine that, there's an emotional shift mindset shift that has to happen when a therapist who is used to being a service provider is now taking on this new identity as like a business owner, which I mean, if you have a private practice, technically you're already a business owner, but I feel like there's like this disconnect where starting a coaching business feels like way more of a heavy lift. So what would you offer to kind of get past the mindset blocks that could happen for people?
There are so many mindset blocks, and this is why I love identity work so much too. And it goes with any identity that you're adding on, right? I will say that it is a shift, but it's also an understanding and a knowing that you've been doing this work. You're not new to the work. And so, really creating evidence for yourself how you are already someone that can guide people through a transformation, someone that can work for themselves and charge their own prices, right? Because a lot of therapists don't identify as business owners, and they could be 10 years into private practice and they still don't identify as business owners. And so, there's almost this layer of creating not only your coaching identity, but also your business owner identity simultaneously. And what I offer is looking back at all the evidence you've already created. What are all those skills that you're so good at that make you a great therapist? Like I call it my identity framework. It's like looking at your key roles, right? For me, it's being a daughter of immigrants, being the eldest, and also being a therapist. Okay, in those three roles, in those three identities, what are some of the things that I'm really good at, qualities that I have that I can do in my sleep? And I list those out, and then I circle the ones that are transferable to coaching and to being a business owner. As eldest daughters, as daughters of immigrants, right? We've been problem solving our whole entire lives. And so I truly believe that innately makes us CEOs because we know how to figure things out. And so when you allow yourself to draw from the skill sets that you already have, the qualities that you've already cultivated, your lived experience, not just your credentials, then you allow yourself to actually take credit for the things you've done and embody those in your day to day.
I love it. All right, so let's talk about you, Liz. How has this work changed your life personally? Like when you think about how different your life would be if you had not gone down this road into the coaching industry and realizing that there was not an income cap, that there was not a location restriction. What is that physically manifested into in your life?
Oh, I could write another book on this, Jenny. So much. It completely changed the trajectory of my life. If it wouldn't have been for starting coaching and discovering this world, I probably would still be in community mental health. I'd probably be in an unhealthy, toxic relationship. It has opened up my whole life view. I not only left my 9 to 5, decided not to pursue licensing as a therapist. I have my hours and everything, but I decided not to pursue it because I wanted to fully dive into coaching. I ended up leaving a 5-year long-term unhealthy relationship that my business gave me the funding for, right? The space
Mm.
for to grieve, to process whatever I had to grieve. I ended up moving to Mexico City, packing everything, taking a one-way ticket here, meeting the love of my life when I was here and not ready to date. And now I'm married. And so it's completely taken a life's turn. And that's not even, that's the life stuff. And I start there because this work is so much deeper, right? It's about the options you create, the way you liberate yourself, and the autonomy that you create through earning your own money, through having flexibility over like how you work, who you work with, and having the safety net of having different sources of income whenever you need them. And so it's changed the trajectory of my whole entire life. I've broken ceilings I never imagined, not only in love, in life, and in relationships, and in my business and money wise, right? I've now created over a close to a $700,000 business since I started. And so it's like, no one in my lineage would have ever been able to do this. I mean, I come from literally like one generation far removed from poverty. And so it's really groundbreaking what I've been able to do. And there's a lot of power in that, in really showcasing to people that are listening, right? And knowing like the current circumstances that you are navigating right now don't define where you're going. And I have this belief that understanding your past helps you create your dream future because it really does. And so not only is it the healing work, but it's also like building the courage to actually get started, even though I had no idea what the heck I was doing, right? And so you don't need all of the answers. You figured it all along the way. And here we are, close to 5 years later.
Wow. I have goosebumps listening to your story because it is really a testament of almost having like Mariela de la Mora, our mutual friend, she calls it the Delulu syndrome, right? It's just like you just be thinking you can do some crazy shit and then all of a sudden you've done it. And it's so true because when you are charting this path that no one else has charted before, you have to have like almost a delusional self sense of confidence to be like, well, I don't know really what the fuck we're doing, but we're gonna figure it out. And there will be stops and starts and mistakes, and you will make shitty business decisions, and you will lose money, and you will pivot. And all of that is why, you end up where you are because you just have this mission, this vision of what is possible. And those little wins that happen along the way, I think that's the way that you reinforce those. So for folks who are listening to your story and they're just like, damn, I wish I had Liz's confidence, but like it's so overwhelming. I don't know where to start. Like, what would your advice be to start to curate that confidence that can get you to maybe this becoming your own goal?
I love this question. I would offer to let yourself dream. Coming back to this Delulu mentality, a lot of what I've been able to overcome and heal through in my life has been to allow myself to dream because our brain is literally so negative. It's wired to be negative and to protect us. And so what I offer is asking yourself the question, letting yourself dream, but also asking yourself, what if you can? Like, what if you can? What if this does work out for you? And even just starting there, right? Because having the courage really, like, the courage starts by you deciding and claiming and speaking it into existence. If you say, hey, it would be so cool to go and move abroad, right? Or start a business, you just saying that into the world, it allows it to plant a seed in your brain. And so letting yourself dream, I don't think we spend enough time letting ourselves dream, especially because we're wired culturally too, right? To survive. And so letting ourselves dream, asking ourselves, but what if it did work out for me? What if I did make it happen? What steps would I take right now that would make me be closer to that version of me? So if I wanted to, I don't know, save $10,000, like what do I need to do right now? How can I put that into my calendar and actually embody it every single day? If you want to run your first 10K, okay, you don't identify as being a runner, but what can you do today? You start running by walking. Okay, let me go walking for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, and put it into your calendar. If it's in your calendar, it's a priority, and you start becoming the person. And I think we have this narrative, right, that we have to get the thing first before we identify as that thing. And it's completely the other way around. You have to become the person before you actually hold and receive what you want to receive.
That is a powerful message, y'all. You actually have to embody the future version of you that you want to become. That is absolutely true. And nobody's going to believe in your dream unless you believe in it yourself. So, I think oftentimes a lot of us look for external validation and seeing what other people are doing and like, should I do this? Can I do this? Is it possible? I invite you to entertain the fact that maybe the people around you are just not at the level that you're trying to be at. And so it's important to curate your environment, curate your space in order to have you thinking higher level thoughts. And I know that that is exactly what you do, Liz, as someone who now is teaching therapists how to incorporate coaching into their business model, how to really like create income that is like exponentially more abundant than anything that you could achieve in traditional therapy practice. So tell us details about how you work with folks, what are your offers, how people can get in touch with you, and where we can find you.
Thank you. Yes. So you can find me on the Beyond Private Practice podcast. I do have a podcast where I share how you can get started literally for free. So you can lean into that resource. I also offer one-on-one coaching if you're looking for private mentorship, where I support you according to where you are and meet you where you are. And I also have the Therapist to Coach Collective, which is my signature group program that's a year long. And you get access to all of the supports and resources that we have inside. I coach you weekly. It's a group coaching program. And so we support you in really creating your first 5 to 10K in coaching as a therapist, meeting you again where you are. And so those are the current ways that you can work with me. And you can find all of the details on my community. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes, but you can find me at the Liz Fernandez, and all of my details and website are on there.
I love it. Liz, I know that the universe brought us together in Puerto Rico because you had an amazing story to share. And the work that you're doing to really empower women of color who are in this field where they do want to make a difference, where they do want to have impact, but they don't want to do it at their own expense and at the, cost of their mental health and their financial security. I am really, really inspired by the work that you do. I know people are going to want to find out more about you. So we're going to link all of Liz's resources in the episode show notes. Make sure to check out the podcast. the Beyond Private Practice podcast, wherever you tune in to Yo Quiero Dinero. Liz, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was so much fun.
Thank you.